What the Mum podcast. My name is Maria Newman and I will be your host. Every mum to be knows that as soon as she becomes a mum, her world will change forever. Everyone is keen to give you advice based on their own experiences. Other mums delight in sharing their horror stories so that new mums are better prepared for what might happen. The lack of sleep, feeling exhausted most of the time, living in bodies with even more wobbly bits and never having any privacy. But everyone's story is unique. Everyone's experience is personal. On this podcast, I will be sharing real stories told by mums like you and I about their experience of motherhood and how life changes when you become a mum. This podcast is about showing you that you're not alone. We may not be in the same boat, but we are experiencing a similar storm. I hope these stories will inspire you to do what you want, be who you want to be. Anything is possible if you really want it and if it is really important to you. If you want to find out more about me and who I am, check out my website, mummyinabreak.co.uk. However, for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy this podcast episode. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. During this podcast series, I will be interviewing 6 awesome women who will be sharing with us their mum stories. My guest today is Karen Birchmore, who I had the pleasure of meeting quite recently, earlier this year actually. So thanks, Karen, for joining me today.
Thanks very much for inviting me.
Oh, no worries, my pleasure. So, Karen, what's it like being a mum?
It is amazing. It is challenging. It is more than you could ever imagine and totally different than anybody ever tells you. Does that sum it up?
I think that's a great summary of being a mum. Now, did you always know that you wanted to be a mum?
I did. I always knew I wanted to be a mum, and I even had my first child named in my head by the time I was 10.
Snap. What was the name, and is it the same as your child now?
His name was Daniel. His name was Danny.
Oh, that's so cute.
Then I had to find a husband whose surname was going to go.
Oh yeah, because what if you had found a man that was called, his surname was Daniel or Daniels?
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah.
See, my brother's called Nicholas Nicolaides, so that's quite normal in the Greek faith. So there you go.
Just go with it, I guess.
So before you became a mum, what were your expectations of motherhood, mumming and everything associated with being a mum?
I think that's a really interesting question. I just always knew I wanted to be a mum, and so I always assumed that I would be very natural at it. And I found it a lot more challenging than I anticipated.
So what are those challenges? What were those challenges?
So I thought I'd be a bit of an earth mother, but then I had a child who didn't particularly enjoy sleeping. And so I was very tired a lot, and it turns out I'm not an earth mother at all.
How would you describe your style?
I've grown a lot being a mum. I think mine are a lot older now, so they're 14 and 16 now. I think accepting that everybody is different and that your kid will not do what the book says that your kid will do. And I'm very much if there's a challenge, if there's a problem, I'll go out and find out about it and work out how to fix it. There's nothing to fix about kids. They're just kids. So I think that bit where my first one was very different to most of his peers, and they were the only people I knew. So I had Danny when I was about 29, and I was the youngest of all of the people I knew. So nobody else had kids. So I was literally living it the first time with the mums that I met when I was pregnant.
And how was that? What was that like, being like the first one? Because everybody must have been like asking you questions, and you haven't naturally got someone that you can go and speak to.
Yeah, I didn't naturally have anybody I could go and speak to that was going through it at the same time. Obviously, I had my mum, but I parent in a very different way than she does anyway. But I found it, I suppose, a little bit isolating in a way, because my friends that I had prior to kids, who are still a lot of my friends today, didn't get it. They were like, what do you mean you can't just do? What do you mean you can't just go? What do you mean you're not coming out tonight? It's like, yeah, I'm a mum, and I'm a mum of a boy who doesn't really like going to other people. So he was with me most of the time.
And I know what it's like for your children, because my daughter was very clingy when she was younger, to the point that cry if I left. And it's difficult, because you, all of a sudden, you go from being independent and making decisions, not really thinking about anybody but yourself, because there is nobody else to think about other than maybe your partner, to then knowing or being aware of how your actions affect somebody else.
Yes. Forever.
Forever. Oh my word. Oh my word. Forever.
I got a lot of sympathy for my mum, because at the time when I was really struggling, so I had postnatal depression with both of mine, but at the time when I was really struggling with my first one, I was phoning my mum and crying and thinking in the back of my head, oh, she still hasn't escaped. She's still my mum. She still has to do all of this stuff for me. I've now got one who in 30 years' time I could be still supporting in the same way.
Yes, once you become a mum, that's it. You are a mum forever, as you said. So how did life change, especially like you just mentioned that you had postnatal depression? Because it's not like, okay, not a mum and now a mum. You've got other things to deal with as well as becoming a mum.
Yeah, and I went from a corporate career where not everything is in your control, but you have a lot of direction, you know exactly what you're doing, to being at the will of a little person who didn't like the way I did things. So it changed. I think it changed quite dramatically. I think I lost me initially. I was very aware when I went back to work, the first time somebody called me Karen instead of Danny's mum. I was like, oh, I forgot. I'm a person of my own right.
Isn't that funny? I've written a blog that includes the fact that when you become a mum, your name is erased, because I don't know, is it the those people, I say those people, like, when you take your child to childcare, whether it's nursery or you go to play group, and the person who's running the play group, they know your child, and you are then just their mum. So you lose, and then I always find it funny that you get to know people in those groups. If you don't make an effort, you then start calling them Joe's mum.
Oh, so the number of people that you get in your phone that you're like, Sarah, so and so's mum, right? They get a context, but they may get a first name, but they get a context of whose child they belong to.
They do. And I want, that's a very simple thing that I think I would like to change, and it might be out of respect or whatever, but I want people to call mums by their name, because I think that adds to us like losing our identity, and it starts to reinforce that, well, you're a mum, you're a mum, you're a mum, you're a mum, and it's like, well, yes, I am a mum, I know that, you don't have to keep on reminding me, but actually I'm an individual first. Hi, nice to meet you, my name is Maria.
Yes, exactly. Well, Danny's karate instructor didn't used to call me Danny's mum, he just used to call me mum.
Oh. I don't know, is that over familiar?
Well, all of the mums, when he was talking to them, he'd just go, all right, mum. Right. Which I was like, oh, actually, that's a bit weird. If you're going to call me mum, at least put Danny in front of me.
Yeah. It's like, I'm just trying to think, has anybody like referred to me who's not related to me Because obviously, like my parents, I don't call them mum and dad necessarily in front of my children. They're now like, well, in Greek, they're Paul, as grandma and granddad. But it's funny because now, like when we're all talking to each other, like my husband, I'll probably call him daddy, which is, I know, is weird, but it's like we're not helping ourselves because we're referring to each other as a role.
Yes, but it is to kind of help your kids understand as well, though, isn't it? So there is a function in that, and the fact that so one of the things I noticed that my husband does was he would call himself dad or daddy when he was talking about things, and I never talked about myself in the third person. I didn't ever call myself mummy when I was talking to my kids.
Yeah.
But lots of people do say, oh, mummy's just going to do this for you, or do you want mummy to tie your shoelaces, or that kind of thing. I would be like, do you want me to tie your shoelaces? Because you already know I'm mummy.
Yeah, but also there's that natural point where, you know, they now know the relationship they have with different people, because obviously grandma and grandpa, to them, when they're younger, unless you sort of tell them where everybody is and how, and use that to allow them to relate to each other, they're like, well, this is just another person. Like, it's like,
yeah, it's just their label, isn't it? It's just like having a name, Karen.
Exactly.
Grandma, that's her name.
But there'll be a point, won't there, when we can actually stop calling. So I might now, having had this conversation with you, next time I speak to my mum and dad, I'm going to start calling them mum and dad, because my son is 6, my daughter is 9. They know that they're my parents. They know that they're their grandparents. So I think I could probably stop referring to them as and Paul. I know that seems like a really insignificant thing, but
no, I think I call mine mum and dad, and sometimes and when I'm talking to my kids, I will call my parents mum and dad, and then sometimes I'll quantify, oh, that's grandma and grandpa, right? That's who I'm talking about. But not really. I don't think. I think I do call them mum and dad because they know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, yeah. So this is what I'm going to do now, because I think my time has come. I'm going to change that. So it's not about me, it's about you. So talk to me about some things that have been most challenging for you being a mum. So
I did find the lack of sleep very challenging, and my eldest one did not sleep through consistently until he was about 6. I functioned for a very long time on a lack of sleep. So that, I think, nobody can prepare you for. A challenge, but one that you should expect, is that they're little people from day one, and they're not in your control. My two are polar opposites of each other. So now as teenagers, I have one rule follower and one who stretches boundaries, shall we say.
That was very nicely put.
They are completely the opposite. I have got one who manages his money exceptionally well, and the other one who's never got any money. They are just totally different from each other, and I think learning to parent them in a way that works for them. So I don't parent them both the same way, which sometimes can cause friction because it can feel like it's not fair.
That's really interesting, because we as parents want to be fair, and I think we think initially, I say we, it's not like I've spoken to every single parent, we think that being fair means treating our children the same. But I think you're right. And if we think in like the business world, when we're managing people who work for us, you can't manage everybody in the same way, because everybody has different needs, and we're trying to like get the best out of them. And that's the same with our children. You know, we're raising them so that we can help them be the best they can be, and what might work with one child isn't necessarily going to work with another. So so tell me, how do you do that?
I don't think I did it right for a lot of years. I think since I've become much more aware of things like mentoring and coaching that I was doing at work and now do, I have a lot more things in my toolbox. So I'm much more aware of the fact that they're different and I can choose to treat them differently. I'm much more laid back than I used to be as well. So I think that makes it a lot easier. So if one of them comes to me with a challenge, I'm not panicking and going, oh my goodness, I've got to solve this challenge. I'm like, how can we solve this challenge? That again, that comes with age. You can't do that all the time. You can with younger kids, because you can make sure that they always have choice, so that they're used to choice. It's just you define what their choices are, so that choice doesn't overwhelm them when they get a bit older. So you can do that kind of thing. Does that answer the question? I lost track.
Well, so and I'm going to keep it going along this, because obviously when we're pregnant, we get given a lot of advice, whether it is asked for or not. So knowing what you know now, and having been through practiced being a mum, if you could go back in time and give yourself 3 pieces of advice, what would you say to yourself?
My first piece of advice, which I probably did follow from pretty much near the beginning, was ask for loads of opinions and pick the one you like best. Because everybody's opinions are different. So pick the one you like best, the one that works for you, the one that resonates for you. And if it doesn't work, change it. You don't have to be stuck in a way of doing things. So that's number 2. And 3 is treat them as individuals right from the beginning. So don't expect that what works with one child will work with another child, which you tend to find pretty early when you try and put them both on a naughty step, and you discover that you get totally different reactions from them. Though my younger one, that doesn't really care too much about rules, he used to do something naughty and take himself to the naughty step.
Well, that's very mature.
Well, it was just not enough of a consequence for him. He didn't care. He'd rather do the thing and then go and sit on the naughty step.
See, children can be more clever than we give them credit for. And I think that's another thing for me. Like when I was younger, I think adults assumed that it's not that we weren't intelligent, but didn't give children the credit for being able to use their brains.
Yes.
And it was like more a case of you do as you're told, rather than I'll ask you your opinion because, well, you probably don't have an opinion, or if you do, it's probably not
wrong.
Yeah, wrong. Whereas I can, having experienced that, like, you know, reflecting on my childhood, that's definitely influenced the way I talk to my children. And don't get me wrong, there are times when, like this morning, Luca decided he wanted to push the sofas like together, like really together. And mummy, why can't it be like this all the time? So I said to him, because Daddy and I like the sofas how they are. But why? Because it looks better. But why? I'm not answering any more questions. This is how it is, and you need to accept it. And there are just some times when actually I don't need to justify my opinion. No. This is how it's going to be.
Yeah. I think I grew up hearing a lot of "because I say so," which I did try very hard not to use with mine, but to try and give them a reason or a fact. A fact is because I'm grown up and I know how to make that decision. I have more information than you do, or experience or whatever. So I would try and always give a reason. But you're right, when the question about why and why and why and why repeats itself, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Thank you very much.
Oh my word. Right. And we are coming to the end of our time together, but I just want to ask you, I've got 2 questions actually, but the first one is, what's the best piece of advice anybody has ever given you when it comes to being a mum?
Gosh, great question. I think it's probably do what's right for you and them, not because somebody else tells you should.
Really simple, really simple. And then my final question to you is, people will have been hearing you and they'll be like, oh, Karen, she sounds like a really interesting lady. And you alluded to the fact that, like me, you used to have a career in the corporate world, but now we're doing something that is more worthwhile. So tell us a little bit about what that is and how people can connect with you.
So what I do now is I went back to the corporate world after I had my kids, and then I got made redundant during COVID. And when I looked back at what I had enjoyed the most about my job, it was mentoring people at work. I just didn't know you could do that as a job. So what I do now is I help other people see, before they get to the point of redundancy, that because I felt like a square peg in a round hole and I should have left a long time ago, but I didn't have enough self-belief, and I didn't know that there were other options out there, and I didn't even know how to go about looking for those other options. So what I do now is I empower other people when they're feeling a bit stuck at those career crossroads to really identify what that direction that they want to take is, and then to be able to go out and do that with confidence. So that's what I do.
Well, there you go. And how can people connect with you? Where's the best place to sort of find you?
You can connect with me as Karen Birchmore on LinkedIn or on Facebook. Probably the easiest way. I do have a website, www.clarity-and-confidence.com. Set up very early in my business.
Well, it's all right. We'll put some, I will put some notes as part of this episode so that people can just click and go.
Amazing.
Easy. Well, I'd like to say thank you for taking the time to talk to me today, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast episode, and if you did, then of course please share it with other mums. I have lots more resources for you that will help you on your journey through life. Just visit my website to access them, which is mummyonabreak.co.uk. You can also find out details about my book, Busy. Take care and see you the next time.